Welcome to Kranky Live, the show where bold minds meet real talk. This isn't your average sports or news show. It's where we break down sports, culture, and controversy with facts, fire, and fearless honesty. Here, truth cuts through the noise, and hype gets exposed. From football to track and field, from world issues to local debates, we ask the tough questions, speak without fear, and go deeper than the headlines. We don't follow the crowd, we set the trend. While others recycle the same tired takes, we bring fresh insight, unfiltered analysis, and bold perspectives. No echo chambers, no puppet talk, just real conversations for people who think for themselves. Listen with your brain, not just your ears. Think critically, question boldly, and speak freely. This is Kranky Live, where reason rules the mic and truth always win. Come on, let's get into it. Bless up, bless up, bless up, bless up, bless up, bless up, bless up. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to the Kranky Live podcast. As you hear in my introduction, where we bring truth and righteousness to this place, talk facts, get evidence, empirical evidence to substantiate what we say 99% of the time. 1% you may be given bad information from your sources. 21 years, 3 straight second place near misses, and now Arsenal is reloading and fans are happy. We have a lot to contend with because the past champion Liverpool's not giving up their throne easily. And we have perennial champions Man City, and we also have Chelsea, who can't seem to run out of money. They keep buying and buying and buying, which is a good thing for them. But at the end of the day, this is about Arsenal. We're going to talk about Arsenal today. We're going to talk about the competition. We're going to talk about some of the transfers that are taking place, some are in progress, where we are, Arteta's tenure to date, and basically where we go from here and what will the new additions bring to the team, and can we get them all over the line? First of all, when you come into the chat, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and please share the channel. So, question for you though, even I didn't put this in I did put it in the poll on my channel, which is, will Arsenal win the Premier League in the upcoming season? We have had a number of near misses, and the question is, can we convert that into actuality in terms of actually getting over the line? Because it's been extremely difficult to do so already. Even though if one was to look at the previous 3 years that we came second, I would say for those situations, the first year we came second may have been the best of all of them. When it went down to what? Last game of the season. And if we had had a striker way back when, we may not have been talking about coming also ran or coming second. This discussion would have been about how many titles we'd be winning. Now, Arteta's been with us for 5 years. He's going to his 6th year. He's only won 1 trophy. That was in his first year. So he has a lot to get done. He has a lot to do. And the pressure is on. Now, some people are saying that, you know what? He will not survive if he doesn't win something. I don't know about that. The Krankies are very patient. They're about generating revenues. They're about not necessarily just winning titles. They want to be competitive. They want the value of the team to go in because they're in the sports business, right? They own a number of sports teams, including the Denver Nuggets in basketball. They own a football team. So they are a organization, just like how Todd Bowley's organization is, that also owns the Dodgers. Even though Bowley is the face of the organization, he's not the most important partner in that construct. So you would expect that, given that it's a business for them, they have to treat it accordingly and not just focus on winning, but on how do I ensure that my team is performing well. I can generate revenues from various sources, TV revenues, revenues from Champions League, revenues from gate receipts, revenues from sponsorship deals, those commercial revenues. And they've been doing phenomenal so far, actually. If you look at their revenue stream over the last 5 or 6 years, it's going in one direction, up, up, and up. So let's touch upon Arsenal's transfer business. And we'll also talk about the transfer business of the opposition. We acquired, we can add it here actually, both who we've acquired and who we are considering. So I put together a little chart quickly. I don't have Kepa on here. So we got Kepa. Let me put the goalkeeper in here. We have Kepa. We got from Chelsea for £5 million. I don't know what is it with Arsenal and Chelsea players. Like, it's chronic now. Every window we seem to go after another Chelsea. I don't want to call them rejects. I don't like to use that term ever. So I don't want to call them rejects, but players who were previously members of Chelsea and subsequently became members of Arsenal. So if you look at the list, Kepa is not here. We got him for $5 million. Norgaard we got from Brentford for $10 million plus incentives, another 2 add-ons. And you can look at Norgaard's stats. They're not bad stats, you know. For a CDM, having 6 goals and 4 assists in 35 games, that's about 1 in 3. That's like an 8. That's like an attacking midfielder. Numbers versus one which we consider for a CDM, even though I think he played sort of 2 roles for Brentford, not just your pure CDM. He plays both CDM and both CM and DM, I should say. Even though here it has him a DM, but I think he spent a lot of time going up the field and also, you know, playing further down the opponent's half. And when you do that, you're going to score goals if you have the ability to score goals. And also his interception ratio is pretty good, actually. So it's really interesting going after him to replace Jorginho. Now, I think Jorginho did a very good job for Arsenal, but he had no legs, right? When he has the ball at his feet, he was very good. His positioning was good. His passing was good, especially over the top. And he's a very good footballer. Obviously, he's now in Brazil. But he didn't have the legs to chase. And whenever he got run past, he would foul the opposition, which then put him at risk, having a yellow card and having to play cautious for the rest of the game. But he was a very serviceable servant to the organization, and Norgaard is a much more mobile, much more athletic defensive midfielder, so should add value. And I'd be curious to see how much he plays, given that we've acquired the next player on the list here, which is Zubimendi. I've talked about this previously around how Spain continues to produce exceptional midfielders. And Zubimendi, when Rodri is healthy, he's not even a starter for Spain, right? Because he basically played the DM, so he's not a starter. And yet he's viewed as an exceptional midfielder, and one who Liverpool tried to pry away from his team last year, and we eventually got him, right? And I think that has a lot to do with Arteta. When you speak the language, when you can articulate to the player what his role will be and how he would add value to the team and what the plans are, then players buying into that strategy, they buy into that future, they buy into direction of travel. And he did that with Rice 2 years ago, and he's now done it with Zubimendi. And obviously, Real Sociedad didn't want to sell last year. And so patience is a virtue in this time. Now, he's a truly defensive midfielder, as his stats sort of suggest. But one thing you've noticed in the entire list, which I will mention, is the durability of the players. Because as you know, Partey, who I rate highly, by the way, I think he's the second best CDM in world football after Rodri, actually, in terms of Partey. That's how much I rate Partey. People may have different perspective on that, but he was getting older. He wanted more money, and he was a free agent, so I'm sure he's going to get a sign-on bonus wherever he goes. Plus, he does have a legal case, which he's going through now, which may affect him materially in terms of team want to sign him on, because it may be a waste of money if they sign him and he got convicted. in charge with 5 counts of rape or something. So not that good. And that's it take 3 years to bring those charges, which I find really interesting. But not to digress. But Zubimendi is deemed as a really good player. And what we need in the midfield are players what we call press proof. So you want players who, when the press is on, they can find ways to navigate around the press and not be susceptible to it. And that's Zubimendi. Victor Gyökeres, the stats are phenomenal, even though there are a number of penalties in the stats. Obviously, he was at Brighton, he was at Coventry. I'm surprised, we have this situation with players who mature late, right? You're seeing it with Salah, you see it with De Bruyne, who were both at Chelsea. Salah went to Italy, De Bruyne went to Germany, came back to the Premier League and really made significant contributions. Yeah, he have a legal case. I know he has a legal case. Yeah, thanks, Slitek. But he's still a brilliant footballer, regardless of his case. So Gyökeres scored goals in Championship. I think he's probably had 20 goal season for Coventry, who were pretty close to getting the Premier League at a point in time. Went to Portugal, has done phenomenally well. Now, people are approximating or using the comparative between him and Nunes, who's at Liverpool, who tore up the Portuguese league. It's not the same level as the other top 5 league, and yet when he came to the Premier League, Nunes has struggled to score goals. I think Nunes is a very good footballer. I rate Nunes, actually. But I'm not sure what's wrong with him and the goal. They seem to be adverse to each other, and it's reflected in his goal output. But Nunes is physical, strong, quick, have some skills. Gyökeres is a beast, right? I watch him in the Champions League mainly, watch him against Man City and some other games, and he's a very strong, physical forward who knows where his goal is, can score with either foot, and has, if you look at the stats for last year and over the last 2 years, have over 90 goals in the last 2 years, and has just over a goal a game, which is phenomenal for any striker. You talk about Haaland type numbers, but he has to do it in the Premier League, and he's 27 years old, so he's not young. The next player on the list, and look, the deal with Gyökeres is that negotiation is ongoing. I think the understanding is that Sporting want 80 million euros. Arsenal is not at that number. So they're trying to come to with a compromise. They understand that they have 5 million apart in terms of where they need to get to. So they'll get there. And Gyökeres has sacrificed about 2.1 million of his salary to try to help to finalize the deal or to get closer. He's going to make £200,000 a week. Not bad money in a 5-year contract. So he won't be starving. I'm sure he's making less than 50K a week now in Portugal. So that's a great buy for Arsenal. The big discussion has been for a while around, is it Sesko? Is it Gyökeres? All right. Sesko is raw, 22 years old. Much more. I was thinking about Sesko. He's about 6'4", 6'5". He's much more of a technical player to me than Gyökeres is. Not as prolific though, and not as seasoned experience as Gyökeres. But he has time on his side, right? He's only 22 years old. But his club wanted too much money. He wanted 80 to 100 million. They wanted 100 million euros. Arsenal wasn't going to pay that. And we wanted him in January and last year, and they were reluctant to sell. So they may have priced themselves out the market, and they may not want to sell. Sometimes those clubs may need the money or want the money, but they refuse to sell because they also want to compete. They also want to get Champions League. They also want to generate a Champions League money. So why would they want to sell? But Gyökeres looked like he's going to... He only wanted Arsenal, which is great. And even though Amarin was his coach at Sporting, he only wanted Arsenal. And I'm assuming that part of the rationale is that Man U is going through a very difficult time. Things seems to be all over the place. They don't have any European football next year, right? And they lost in the Europa League finals. The Spurs got that Champions League slot. So everybody want to play Champions League. Everyone wants to play against the best, unless you decide to go to Saudi Arabia for the money. So Gyökeres is a good spot. Hopefully he'll produce, not necessarily, he won't produce like he did in Portugal, but hopefully he'll put away the chance that he gets. And we'll play differently, right? He's a more ball to feet, down the line striker. He's going to run the channels. And we'll have to play more direct, I think, than trying to circulate the ball to find gaps. I think we'll play a little more direct with him because he will bully defenders. Now, Eze is a player who I love, actually. And if you look at Eze's stats, people, he plays a really interesting role. He plays the 8 a lot of times, but it's almost like he played like a second forward sometimes. And you see stats, there's about 23 in 43 in terms of goal contribution last year. I'm sorry, 25 in 43 last year, which is a really good goal contribution for a midfielder who's not playing forward or not playing wing. Those are really good stats. And my expectation when it comes to Arsenal is that those numbers will also improve. It's really interesting to see also his interception numbers, which is about 2 a game. The one thing I think Eze may struggle with actually is Palace doesn't play that pressing style that Arsenal does. And defensively, sometimes you can lax, like Grealish should do at Villa, in a team when you're not required defensively to put out a lot of effort, or as much effort as would be required from the better teams, where all the players are good and there's a philosophy in terms of how they want to play and a style of play. And pressing is what part of the better teams do nowadays. So the question is, he will have to change his play, how he plays, if we do get him. And conversation, I mean, we haven't had a conversation with Crystal Palace yet. They are a hard team to deal with. They remind you of Spurs, not on the same level, but Paris is a very difficult negotiator. It'll be interesting to see what happens if we can prime away from Crystal Palace. I know Spurs had some initial interest, but those interests wane because, Paris, who runs Crystal Palace, is very difficult to deal with. Very difficult. Madueke has divided, well, not truly divided. Fans are not having Madueke as a target that we're pursuing. Chelsea won 50 million plus. He has 16 goal contribution in about 45 games. I think he's a good player. He's an England international, which I find really interesting, actually. That for an England international, I know AFTV has done some polling. I think what the last polling I heard that they did was like 95% of Arsenal fans or individuals didn't want Madueke, us to pursue Madueke, which I think is really interesting. So that's going to be interesting going forward, which is what will Arsenal do? I think we really want Rodrigo, not Madueke. Berta, our new GM, I'm going to call him, always negotiate more than one player, like he was doing with Sesko and with Gokares. So this may be something that he does this time in terms of negotiating with Madueke and trying to get Real Madrid to consider selling Rodrigo to us. He's only going to pay one of the two. Madueke may be more achievable. There are rumors that Madrid would sell Rodrigo to PSG. Well, I don't think need him. They have enough wingers. If they would sell Vitinha, the midfielder, or Vitinha, whatever his name is, to Madrid, or so it's almost like an exchange, because Madrid really do need midfielders, especially given Modric is getting really old. And then last but not least, and look, Madueke has played well for Chelsea. We'll see if he starts in the World Cup semifinal, the Club World Cup semifinal. But he's a good player, and he's a direct player, and he takes on defenders. He's got to do a better job of making decisions in the final third. He struggles with that. As do a lot of wingers do. Think about wingers like Doku and all that, even Savino. They don't make the best decisions, especially when they go by the defenders. Should I play the ball back to the penalty line? Should I cross across the box? Should I cross it up, put it up to the 8? Where do I place that ball to give my team the best chance to score? My team the best chance to score. They don't do the best job of doing that. But Madueke, I think, is a good player. I'm a little surprised how negative Arsenal fans are when it comes to Madueke. I think part of that negativity comes from the view that we have acquired in the past too many Chelsea players. We're supplementing them financially, and that shouldn't be the case. Go all the way back to Gallas, go more recently to Havertz, who we bought for 68 mil. Jorginho came from there. David Luiz. There's so many players who Arsenal have bought from Chelsea, or brought it from Chelsea, and people are just tired from it. Peter Cech, you can go on and on with the list. They're just tired of it and they don't want to have it. So it may not be a strictly Madueke issue, even though I think they want a more prolific and a more known winger to compete with Martinelli or to replace Martinelli. But fans are not having it. So we'll see what happens. Look, if he gets acquired, the fans will support him. They have no choice, just like how Havertz was. And one of the things that people haven't talked about, which I'll touch upon today, is what happened to Havertz now if all these players come in, right? And all these players we're talking here will cost you between 250 and 300 million. But Arsenal seems to have the money to spend. Now, Rodrigo, who's at Real Madrid and he's at the Club World Cup, is not getting much playing time. In fact, very limited playing time, actually. I think he came on the 80-something minute the last game they played, and they're now in the semifinal. Part of that may be the emergence of Garcia, the forward. Part of that also may be that they plan to sell him and don't want him to get injured, right? Because he's not happy playing on the right. He can play all across the middle, but he wants to play on the left. Well, Vinicius Jr. is playing on the left, so that's not happening. Or Mbappe may play out there, so that's not happening. So, Mbappe's been used more in the middle last year. So he's in a tough spot. He's a very good player. I don't have the same rating for Rodrigo as a lot of people do. I hear people gushing about Rodrigo and how wonderful he is. His stats are decent, right? 25 in 54, just over goal contribution about 1 and 2, but it's no different from Eze's stats. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. And is he better than Martinelli, who had a difficult year last year, who's a good player, but who needs to do a better job of how he thinks football. You hear the constant theme nowadays around decision making. He's not the best decision maker. And last but not least is Christian Mosquera, who's a defender. And, we lost Tomiyasu, who they decided to tear up his contract by mutual consent. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens if we do get him. I think we have lowballed Valencia and trying to get the player, and they're not having it. But I think we may get him. His stats are pretty good. He doesn't tackle a ton, frankly. I was reading an article about him, which is he more reads the game and try to get interceptions. When he goes in, most of the time he does win his tackles, but he doesn't tackle a whole lot compared to other central defenders in the La Liga. So he's 21. He's young. If you look at this list, nobody here is over 27, right? In fact, 27 may be a little bit seasoned to buy a player. Is going to cost about 68 million. At least that's his release clause. Sure, they're going to try to negotiate something cheaper, as being saying, coupled with trying to pay in installments. Now, I hear people talking about this installment payment, and people don't want to pay cash. And also, I'm going to do a program one of these days on PSR and how that works, because there's a lot of misinformation going out about how you record these things from a financial statement standpoint. What does it mean when you buy a player for 80 million, how much count towards the current year in terms of, quote unquote, an expense across your books, which you want to marry to your income. So, and that affect the PSR number. You can't have a certain amount of loss over a 3-year period from a financial standpoint. So, and I do hear people talking about this and talking about the cash element, which is just not as important. The cash element is only important to the people who are paying and receiving the cash from the context of, do I have the cash to pay out? And if I have it, do I really want to pay it? Versus deferring the payment and maybe paying a little bit extra throughout the terms of the agreement because I want to hold that cash for whatever reason, right? They don't like to just spend their cash buying players. They do like what Chelsea does, that's why Chelsea have these long-term contract. They have a 10-year contract and they buy a player for 100 million. Only 10 million comes across against their books in the current year. Okay, you divide 100 million by 10. So, for example, Gokares, we buy him for 70. He has a 5-year contract, it should be 14 million against the books in a current year, and it's spread over the life of the contract. Now, when you wipe the player of the books, the entire amount count. So, I'll give you an example. Darren Nunez from Liverpool, he was bought for about 80 million, somewhere around there. He's been there about 3 years. I don't know his contract. Let's say his contract was 5 years, so it's 60 million a year. For 3 years, they've written off 48 million. If he leaves, the entire 32 million remaining gets put against your expenses instead of the 60 million. So that's how this ought to work. And I'll probably do some session on that at some point to talk through that. But it's a very good list by Arsenal. We're talking about Norgaard, Zubimendi, Gyökeres, Eze, Madueke, Rodrigo, Mascara, and also Kepa, who's not on the list. So we won't bring in both Madueke and Rodrigo. So we could bring in 7 new players. Now, we lost Tierney, we lost Jorginho, we lost Partey, we probably will sell Nelson. So there are a number of other players, but it's an impressive list of players. Not all of them will be starters. And some question that arise, for example, is if we do bring in all these players, let's think about this. Eze is not a true left winger. He plays on the left. Would he compete with Odegaard? And who would you take? Odegaard or Eze? That's an interesting one. Odegaard had a very tough year last year. Eze is creating assists and know where the goal is. So do you take Odegaard or Eze? Odegaard is the captain. So, and I don't trust Arteta, to be frank, in terms of how he picks his team and his in-game management. I think he's a brilliant coach on the training field. I don't know about his abilities when it comes to game management and selecting the best team or the appropriate team, given facts and circumstances. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to be so much better when it comes to team selection and how we manage the games. But I do think he will have options and can't make the excuses anymore that, oh, you know what? We don't have the players, so I can't go to my bench. That will change. Now, one thing we have to look at is who is the competition? And the competition is tough. Look at Liverpool. They have brought in about 5 players. They brought in Jeremie Frimpong for about 29 million from Leverkusen. He's a very good right back. I think Liverpool has improved all around. They've improved that right back. I think Jeremie Frimpong is a better player than Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, some people may think that's heresy and Kranky know what he's talking about. But Alexander-Arnold can defend, and I'm hearing noise out of Real Madrid already about Valverde need to protect him. He always needs protection. Konate protect him at Liverpool. Now we need protection from Valverde because he can't defend. He's brilliant going forward, but the game is played 2 ways, not 1 way. So we'll see what happens there. And then we have Florian Wirtz, who cost over 100 million pounds. Cost about 100 million pounds. Between 100 and 112, 116 is the number. Who's supposed to be a brilliant player, but isn't that too much in today's football for number 10? Find that really interesting. They brought Milos Kirkes from Bournemouth, who's a very good player, by the way, for about 40 mil. I think they've improved their defense. They still keep Konate, who's in the last year of his contract. They have Van Dijk. I think that the left and right back are improvements for the team. They have gotten better. And you add Wirtz, who's come in. He's not going to be on the bench. It'll be interesting to see who they play in the midfield, right? They now have 4 midfielders in there. Who sits? Is it going to be the Hungarian who sits? So they can only play 3 of them. They can only play 2 of them, I should say. They can only play 3. So somebody would have to sit, right? The players they have there now won the league. They've played really well. Someone have to sit. The question is, will they replace Jota? They have to go get a center forward. I know they were really thinking about Isak, but the question does arise as to who they're getting center forward. But they're going to be formidable for a long time to come because Frimpong and Kirkes are good players and young enough. Van Dijk getting old, so they have to replace Van Dijk at some point, but it doesn't look like he's slowing down. The midfield is repeat from last year, plus Florian Wirtz. And on the wing, they have Salah, they have Diaz, they have Gakpo. Obviously, the tragic situation in their situation, their forward line, in their loss that they experienced recently in Jota, and they promised to sell Nunez. So we'll see what happens there, but they're gonna spend some more money, and they want over 50 million for Nunez. I have no idea why anybody would pay 50 million for Nunez, even though it cost them about 80 because he hasn't scored enough to justify such a purchase price. And they did bring in another backup goalkeeper in Freddie Woodman, and they had bought Georgi Omardashvili, who's in, and they have Pexi comes in for 1.5. So they bought about 3 backup goalkeepers because Alisson's still going to be there. So they're in a really good place. Man City also, I don't know about Man City acquisitions though. They seem to be all over the place sometimes. They haven't done the same job that they did previously in terms of their acquisition. So they bought Nori from Wolverhampton. He's a left back, but more of an attacking left back. They bought Turkey from Leon, who's a very good attacking midfielder and should do really well in the Premier League. They bought Tijjani Reijnders, I always mess his name up, from Milan, who played quite a bit in the Club World Cup. And it should be interesting going forward about how they do. They did do some purchases in January. So it'd be interesting to see what they do going forward, but they're going to be back and competing. They can't get rid of Grealish. It's very interesting, people, that a number of English wingers more recently who have been acquired for a lot of money or are making a lot of money, and or both, clubs don't want them. So let's think about it. Grealish, 100 million, making probably about 300 a year. People can't afford their salary, and they don't want to give up their salary, and you can't find a team. Rashford, homegrown, so whatever money you make from him goes straight to the bottom line, but he can't find a team. He wants Barcelona, but Barcelona wants Diaz. He may be a last resort since Williams decided to stay with his club, but he's have difficulty finding a team. He was on loan at Villa last year, did fairly well, but Villa can't afford his wages. And then you have Sancho, who was at Chelsea, who paid 5 million not to have him, so pay not to take him on board. And he makes too much money also. Man U pays ridiculous amount of salary, and it's coming back to bite them because teams can't afford those salaries. Which team can afford 350? Unless you Man City, frankly. Arsenal doesn't even pay over 300. Havertz, the highest paid player, at 280. That probably came over from what he was making at Chelsea. So it'd be difficult for a team to acquire those players given their compensation level. Other team to consider is 2 more teams, Newcastle. Well, I'll talk about Man U also. Newcastle, who are struggling to add players to their list, right? They buy Anthony Langa from Nottingham Forest for 55 million plus add-ons. But Langa just cost a couple of years ago 50 million from Man U. I'm sure Man U must have a sell-on clause, but that's a lot of money for a player who scored 6 goals in a season. I think that's ridiculous, frankly. He scored 6 goals in his whole season, and you're going to get sold for 55 million pounds? Really? No wonder Liverpool want Nunez, or we want to sell Nunez for over 50 million pounds. Because Nunez to me is a better, could probably play a wing as well as Langa can. And Newcastle is struggling to add players. Now, Newcastle, on paper, is the richest team in the Premier League. However, on paper doesn't matter. The owners are the richest, not necessarily the club per se, because that role is sort of bifurcated between the money that the club generates to pay for its expenses versus what your owner could put in. You can't just put in a contribution and fix things. And that's where they're struggling, is how they generate revenues to then allow them to go out in the marketplace and acquire quality players. So, and look, they'll match Isak, Anthony Gordon, and Elanga together. So I guess Murphy will go to the bench and Harvey Barnes will go to the bench. So it's going to be interesting because when you get sold or acquired 55 million, you're not going on the bench. Now, if we go to Chelsea, so I'm not sure what Newcastle is going to do. They need to add to their midfield. They need to add probably defender or 2. And they need to add on they have enough wingers. They need a center forward because Callum Wilson have left the club. So maybe they got to find a center forward. We'll see what they do. And then we go to Chelsea, and the list is too long to talk about. Chelsea's a different animal. So Fabi say his last season brings up his fee, and he had a good contract. Still longer, that is. Okay. Yeah, but he only scored 6 goals, right? He didn't score a ton of goals, so I can understand. He's quick, he's skillful, he's a good player, but he's not prolific in terms of scoring goals. So not sure how you justify that big field, Fabi. That's a lot of money for a player who scored 6 goals. A lot of money. Now, if we go to Chelsea, it's a long list, people. It's a long list. The list includes they bought Delap for 30 mil. They bought Mamadou Sarr, who's a centre back, for 12 mil. They bought attacking midfielder Kendry Paez for 70 mil. They bought Juan Pedro more recently for 55 mil. They bought James Kidden somewhere in the 48 to 53 mil. They bought Estevio Willian, who played against them in the Club World Cup and scored, for 25 mil plus a lot of add-ons. So they bought a lot of players. And that's why maybe they're looking to sell some of their players, because Modric is probably going to be out for, not Modric, but the kid from Ukraine who Arsenal was pursuing. His name is eluding me now. He had a drug problem. So he's probably going to be out for 2 years. So they have to replace him. But if they're looking to sell us Madueke, that means they're probably overloaded. And they also have Sterling on their books. So they have Sterling, they have Neto, they have Madueke. They just have so many players. They have Nkungu, who Bayern wants. But people want their players, which is interesting. They buy young, give them long contracts. Obviously, they bought Pedro, who is going to play in the middle. They have Jackson there already. And yet people still need a center forward. You know, they have Delap and Jackson, who's supposed to be 2 center forwards. They just have a lot of players. And the problem that they have is, I don't know how he does a really good evaluation of those players. Gittins came in, he cost, probably about 50 mil. So he has to get game time someplace. Palmer plays at 10, but Palmer started out playing on the wing. So it's going to be interesting going forward to see how that works out for Chelsea, because they probably just have too many players. They'll have to do some sales, and the question is, who will they sell? Really interesting, actually. And then I want to touch up on a couple of teams. Tottenham has not been overly active. They did have the kid they bought from Japan for 5 mil. They turned Tell's loan into an acquisition, the kid they got from Bayern Munich, the French kid. But they haven't gone out and made these purchases as you would expect at Spurs. Spurs makes a lot of money. Now, I know they have a big debt for the stadium, but they're probably the most financially stable team in the Premier League. And so you ask yourself the question as to why they're not making more purchases. Or are they just taking it easy and they just got rid of their manager who won him a trophy and got him into the Champions League? Are they trying to work through with the new manager what the strategy would be, how he wants Franks from Brentford, what the strategy should be, how they want to play, and who will fit his system? But Spurs hasn't made a lot of noise in the market, which is very interesting, given how they struggled last year and only got out of jail because they won the Europa League. And obviously that was their focus. So we'll see what happens with Spurs. They may lose Romero to Atletico Madrid. That's been talked about for a while. So they probably lose one of their better players, even though I think he's a very rash player. So that should be interesting about where that goes. And then you look at Man U. Now, Man U is an interesting case. And they say they have about 5 players who want to leave the club, which includes Garnacho, Rashford, and Sancho. So it really should be interesting to see what happens with that team. Amorim has not proven himself so far to be a good coach, to be honest. He's getting a lot of leeway. People are blaming the players, but I don't know. Is the Arsenal? No, this show isn't not just Arsenal. I'm talking about your team now, Drew Ross. Talk about Man U. So Man U acquired Cunha. Now Cunha can play the 9, even though people are saying he's a 10, a second forward. He can play the 9. And they want to buy Mbeumo. So Man U may recover real quickly. They get Cunha and Mbeumo playing, depends on what system he's playing, but Mbeumo playing on the left and Cunha playing in the 9. They'll have a good team. They'll have a good team. The midfield probably needed. What would I do with Sanchez, actually? Because if Cunha is playing the 10, then Fernandez would then have to play, not Sanchez, Fernandez would have to play the 8. Fernandez is not an 8, he's only a 10. Yeah, it's not being underwhelming because you spend a ton of money doing a lot of stuff. You need a goalkeeper? I don't think you get a goalkeeper. Onana is not a terrible keeper. He just hasn't played well the last 2 years as well as he can. But your team will be better next year, right? Ugarte may play the CDM. Fernandez will play the 8. Cunha plays the 10. You need a center forward. Haaland has just not done it, but he's still there because nobody wants to buy him. They made some horrible purchases. Didn't Haaland cost about 6-something mil? And then you have the kid who went to Betis, what's his name? The Brazilian, cost like 80 mil. And now you can't sell him for 30 mil. I mean, Ten Hag made some really bad buys, even though Ten Hag is not the only one who does it, right? It's a team that makes this acquisition. The coach get blamed. But Man U, if they had 4 or 5 players, they may be in a good place. And we're playing them first. So we see how that happens. We're trying to get our transfer over the line as quick as possible. But Man U can have a potent front line, people. Will it be what? Diaby? Well, Diaby may play the wing back, but Diaby, Cunha, a center forward, and Bueno. That's as good as anything in the Premier League, isn't it? You think about it. That's a very, very good front 4. And then you had Ugarte behind them. Don't know who played it. Was it Casemiro? Is it Meno? Who will play the other midfield role? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's going to be Fernandez. So Ugarte, Fernandez, Cunha, and Bueno, Diaby, and then somebody else up top. That's not a bad front. What? If you think about it, that's 6 players who are very, very good. 5 to 6 players. Now, they'll have to supplement that with a good bench, but he can't have an excuse next year. You need 2 midfielders. Well, don't you have a bunch of midfielders? You have Casemiro, you have Fernandez, you have Ugarte, you have, who am I missing? Meno. You have a bunch of midfielders. I know Ericsson and some of the other ones have left, but you can have a very good team, actually. I don't know why you guys don't bring Rashford back. If you have a Rashford, I don't know why you don't bring Rashford back. I'm not sure the 3 at the back either is the right formation, but he's sticking to it. That's what he knows. That's what he likes. Yeah. NDD? Nandi, you said, right? I know they were looking at NDD at one point, weren't they? As a backup for the CDM role. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens actually with Man U. And Man U have a lot of fans, people. I saw, what's his name? The kid that does their channel talk about Man U a lot, and he has about 2 million plus subscribers, so which is more than what AFTV has. Because Man U is globally probably one of the best supported teams, probably after Real Madrid and Barcelona, I would think. Yeah, Ndidi's a good player. Probably close to 30 now. He's a good backup. See, he's playing more forward now for Leicester than he did in the past, right? He's playing more 8 than the truly CDM role, actually. But he was an excellent CDM when they were winning titles, or when they were winning FA Cups and all that. Very, very good player. So he'll be a good addition, actually, as a backup. But no, I do think Man U will be much better next year when they get their squad settled. And people need to get the squad settled soon because preseason is not far away, right? For some people, it's a week away. For some people, it's a couple of weeks away. That's why Arsenal trying to get his business done. If Arsenal gets Eze in along with, I will take Madueke, unlike most people, because I think he has ability. And he's an England international. I don't understand how you're an England international and you're treated like crap by Arsenal fans and other fans as a bad buy. Why are you an England international then? And he can play both right and left side, and he goes at people. He's not prolific in front of the goals. I don't understand that, but he's getting slaughtered by a lot of Arsenal fans. And as I said before, early in the program, it's mainly because he's probably a Chelsea fan, which is interesting. Or a Chelsea player, I should say, not a fan. But when you look at the top 4 or top 5, you add Newcastle to the mix, and then you add Man U and Spurs, even though Spurs has made a lot of acquisition, it's going to be a very, very interesting season. A lot of teams are getting rated. You know, Brentford got rated in terms of Mbeumo, their best player. What will happen to Wissa is the question. I thought Wissa was brilliant last year. I don't think people give Wissa the rating that he deserves. If I was Man U, why is Juras? Why is Man U looking at Wissa from Brentford? I think he would do well at Man U. He's quick, he's skillful, he's difficult to mark. I watch him play against us a number of times. And watch him in other games. He's a really good player. And he knows where the goal is. Right? I think he and Mbeumo, they were a lethal partnership last year. Scored a ton of goals for Brentford. Now, how does Brentford recover from losing Mbeumo? Don't know, but I don't hear Wissa's name called in any transfer. I would think that's a team like Nottingham Forest, for example, or even Newcastle, but he may be too expensive, right? It's probably the same price as Mbeumo, somewhere in the 60, 50 million. If you're scoring double-digit goals and Elanga is costing 55 mil, why is Man U not just paying the fee for Mbeumo? Mbeumo scored 20 goals last season. Elanga scored 6. Elanga went for 55 mil. I am shocked also that Newcastle didn't go for Mbeumo. I know he only wanted Man U, but it's interesting. His age? Okay. How old is Wissa? I don't know what his age is, but he's a good player. Because they didn't miss Tony, right? Tony went to, he's 28. Yeah, maybe that's what the reason why. So he wouldn't cost them more than 40 mil, I don't think, if you're 28. But he's a very good player. Year less. But no, I think Mbeumo is a brilliant footballer and would add a lot of value to Man U with Cunha also, because they're technical. Both of them are technical footballers. Unlike Gyökeres, to me, he's not as technical as those two players, but he's a much more robust, physical player. No. They're night and day. Zerski doesn't know where the goal is. Wissa and Zerski are not in the same ballpark. Wissa is a completely different player. Wissa gets behind defense. Zerski plays in front. Zerski has touches, but Zerski, to me, is more of a 10 than a forward, even though he plays forward. And he's also not a 10 who knows where the goal is. No, Wissa is a much better player. Wissa is dynamic. Now, they're totally different players. He's not the most physical, imposing from a size standpoint, but he plays big. So no, I don't think they're close in terms of how I would view the two players, actually. Not even one bit. Totally different. I'll take Wissa at Arsenal. Not to be my main striker into this environment, given that they're going to have to Gyökeres, but frankly, I'll take Wissa at Arsenal as my forward. I think he's that good when I watch him over and over again. Wissa I think Wissa is a very underrated player, actually. And sometimes these players come up late in the process and you don't see them. And then even when you see them, they don't get recognition because they're not playing for the big team. If you were playing for Man U before or Chelsea or whatever, people would be very much giving him his due and his flowers, but he's not getting it because he hasn't played for one of the better teams. He was not started at Brentford for a while, given that Tony was the main man playing with Mbeumo. But Brentford has not missed Tony at all, given Wissa's emergence. So I don't know why people wouldn't give Wissa more flowers and recognize his abilities, because he's a very, very good player. If I go back to Arsenal, though, is 3 years of coming second, and the question, the jury's out on Arteta. Should Arteta be fired next year if he doesn't win a title? With a trophy, for Christ's sake, not even the title. We haven't come close to winning a trophy. We haven't come close to winning a trophy in the last 5 years. So what I mean by that, he won the FA Cup in his first year, and he came in January, right? So therefore, it wasn't really his team, but he won with that team. Subsequently, we haven't come close. We haven't made any finals. We haven't come close to winning a trophy. So if that's the case, then, I mean, the closest we've come is when we played PSG the other day. But apart from that, whether it's a cup competition or otherwise, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, one could say we came close to winning the league. That's not a cup competition. We came close the prior 2 years. Last year we weren't close. But last year, what should be noted is that we only gave up 34 goals and we dropped 21 points from winning position. And we lost the league by 7 points. Those numbers speak for themselves. So we give up less than a goal a game, and some of those goals we give up were awful goals that shouldn't be given up, frankly, in some games. And we give away games we are winning and then make some really bad mistakes. And we seem to do that every year. But I do think this year may be different for different reasons. So if you look at the team, if we get all the players we want to get, which is 7 out of the 8 that I have on the list, or something in that region, Raya in goal, Timber right back, Ben White on the bench. The two center halves are who they are, in Gabriel and Saliba, and then we have Lewis Kelly on the left. Calafiori's on the bench, so is Ben White. And then in the midfield, it's going to be interesting if we get all the players. Zubimendi and Rice are plugged in. Who plays the 10? Is it Odegaard? Is it Eze if he comes? That's going to be an interesting one. And then on the wing, I think Martinelli would be on the bench no matter who we buy, whether it's Rodrigo or Madueke. I think Martinelli ends up on the bench. Saka's on the right and Gursky in the middle. That's a very potent. On our bench, we'll have a Odegaard or a Eze. We will have a Ben White. We'll have a Calafiori. I don't know about Nwaneri because we may not sign him. People are very confident we're going to sign him. I don't know about that. Kid is a brilliant footballer, but he wants playing time. And if he doesn't get playing time, he's going to do what like we see with Hutchinson, who was at Arsenal. They're going to go seek playing time. They're not into sitting on the bench. These kids are not sitting on the bench anymore. Right? And then we may have Jesus coming back. We have Havertz. We have Trossard. So it'll be a very potent bench with a bunch of starters who will not be on the bench. If we make and Masquera, if we buy him, would be there. So there'll be some people who don't even make the bench some games because the squad will be so good and so potent. So it does give you some confidence if we can make the acquisitions that we may have injuries, and we will have injuries, but we can withstand those injuries because we'll have a very deep bench. Right? Think about a Ben White, who's an England international, who will not make the starting 11 as far as I'm concerned. Calafiori, Italian international, won't play over Lewis Kelly. I think Gabriel and Saliba are who they are, but Masquera is supposed to be a very good player. So, and in midfield, we'll have a lot of Norgaard to be there, along with Eze. Norgaard be on the bench, Eze or Odegaard on the bench. I think Eze will push Odegaard to the bench at some point. So it's a really, really good team that should be able to compete with any team in Europe, but it's on paper. And the game is played on the field, not on paper. As it relates to the rest of the league, I'm really looking forward to this year, actually. Not only because we have replenished our team, revamped our team, and may change some of the strategy and play more direct, but just in terms of City revitalizing their team and who they have added, and some of the good players they've added. Liverpool making the squad stronger. They lost Jota, but I think they'll be stronger overall in terms of what their team entail. Chelsea, you can never tell. They made the Champions League. They have a lot of players. Those players will mature at some point, but they keep buying more younger ones and put them in the team. So that's a little bit fluid for Chelsea. Newcastle, struggling with PSR as it relates to meeting the financial challenges and requirements and be able to acquire who they want. So that's going to be tough. Nottingham Forest is going to struggle, I think, because they're losing players. And unless they have a good start, they have Edu now. So I'm sure Edu is making some decision behind the scenes, even though he just assumed he assumed his role a while back, but wasn't publicized or confirmed because obviously there's a gardening leave that he has to take. But I'm sure he's pulling the string from behind the scenes and maybe have decided to cash in on Alanga, given that he probably believes he can get better players. So Nottingham Forest will be there. Spurs will be back, there's no doubt, and they'll make acquisitions, and they'll hope to stay healthy in the last year because they had an injury crisis last year. And last but not least is Man U. And I know Drew Ross is a big Man U fan. The question for Man U is, where do you go from here? They have gone in one direction for a while. Everyone blamed the Glazers, but yes, they're the administration, so they're an owner, so they're primarily responsible. But whoever they're hiring, and they're the ones who are making the hiring, have not done the best job of putting the team together. and ensure that they're fiscally responsible and they're getting quality for money. It's amazing to me how much mistake Man U have made in the market. They spent a lot of money and they didn't have enough to show for it. They bought Anthony for 80-something mil. They can't get 30 mil for him. They probably can't give 25 mil for him. Rashford one time was worth about 80. They can get 40 for him. Sancho they bought for 70-something mil. They can't get 30 for him. It's crazy that they have all these players with all this reputation and pedigree, but they paid him so much money when they acquired them, and those players have not lived up to expectation. And they brought in Casemiro. Paid a lot of money for him and paid him a lot of money. And he's been not at the level he was at Real Madrid, being that shield for the defense, being that barrier. So Man U has a tough slate going forward, but I think they'll recover. This year going to be a much better year for Man U. If they have Cunha and Mbueno as two, they will send out a bunch of players on loan. They may have to help pay some of their wages. They'll be in a good place. So looking forward to the season. People, thank you for being here. Before you leave, hit the like button. I decided to do an afternoon show because I'm going to be busy this evening. So let me jump on for a few minutes, talk a little bit about my team, given that they're doing so well in the transfer market. Arsenal fans were panicking at one point and upset that we're not getting a striker. Now we have two strikers. Well, we have a striker and a half a striker. Gyökeres, we don't have on board yet, but we expect to have him. Kai Havertz didn't do bad last year before he got injured. Players like Merino. I didn't even mention Merino in the team. So I mentioned Rice and I mentioned Zubimendi. I even forget about Merino, who was a makeshift center forward last year and who will now battle out with Rice for the number 8 spot. So we have competition for places. Norgaard, Zubimendi, Merino and Rice, and Eze and Odegaard can get across the line. Saka and Waneri on the right, Madueke, Rodrigo, or Martinelli on the left. Center forward is going to be Havertz, backing up Gursky if we get him. And in the defense, we're covered in every single position. So we have 2 players for every position. So we have that 24, 25-man squad, which is a real 25-man squad, where we're going to have 6 or 7 players, or 5 or 6 players not making the match day squad, people, who probably can start for most teams. That should be really interesting for us going forward. And most teams in Europe can't say that, unless you're a Real Madrid or Barcelona and you just spend a lot of money and you produce a lot of quality players. So anyway, thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate you being here. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And peace out. Take care. Kranky Life is the place to be now. For the best sports talk and it's free, yo. Kranky Life will be your guiding light by keeping you informed both day and night. Kranky Life, till them. Kranky Life, heed them. Kranky Life, want them. Kranky Life. From the coast to the field, we'll never lose because Kranky has the hottest news. With expert analysis, we break it down. Our in-depth coverage is best in town. Kranky Life, feel them. Kranky Life, heed them. Kranky Life, want them. Kranky Life. Kranky Life, where the sports is spicy and where we keep the discussion lively. Kranky Life, get to know the name because Kranky analysis is never lame. Kranky Life, give me my Kranky Life. I want my Kranky Life. Must have my Kranky Life. Whether it's football or track and field, you know Kranky is at the wheel. So join the journey through victory and defeat and subscribe and don't miss a beat of Kranky Life. Tell them, Kranky Life. Heed them, Kranky Life. Want them, Kranky Life. If you're from England or USA, from Kingston or Bombay, from Kenya or Canada, Lagos or Havana, visit Kranky Life. Tune into Kranky Life. Like up Kranky Life. Subscribe to Kranky Life. Kranky Life Coming to you on weekdays, Kranky live sometimes on Sundays. Pull up a chair and take a seat because Kranky will always bring the heat. Kranky live, me say fi tell them Kranky live. Me say fi heed them Kranky live. On them, Kranky live. Kranky live will be around. Kranky live is the best in town. Me say fi heed them, me say fi want them. Me say fi heed them, want them, heed them, want them. Kranky live. Kranky live. Heed them, want them, heed them, want them. Kranky live. Kranky live. Heed them, want them, heed them, want them, heed them, want them. Kranky live. Kranky live. Kranky. Heed them, want them, heed them, want them, heed, want, heed them.